All right. So yeah, let's get started. So you should see my screen says ad and sales promotion.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is for my class for those wondering. I'm going to talk about creative problem solving methodologies today for graphic designers. Being able to have your own unique creative problem solving process is not only going to enrich your ideas, provide you with a higher quality set of solutions, but in some cases, it can be your calling card. Okay. It is very much a brand piece that you can take with you from company to company. And as your reputation grows for solving complex problems in really creative ways, so too does your stock. Your stock will rise, your salary expectations will grow, and so on and so forth. Your client base will get larger. And today I want to talk about how to essentially build those processes, that methodology. Okay, so moving on. So let's talk about the creative process. What is your specific creative process? Can you define it? Okay. And everyone in this room would certainly describe themselves as a creative person. And to a larger extent, I believe that everyone is creative. The difference is that by and large, people have little confidence in the idea that they are creative. Creativity manifests in several different ways. It's not just art-based, it's not just visual. um, it manifests in a variety of ways that are specific to the individual, their life experience, their interests, their talents, their skills. Um, but overall, I feel that artists generally have um, more confidence than everyone else in their creative capabilities. I mean, if you go to design school, or if you feel like you can use design software, that alone sort of identifies your level of confidence. All right. But generally, people take a limited and limiting view of the characteristics that are required for a person to, be honored as a creative person. What does that look like exactly? And from my point of view, and I wholeheartedly believe this across 15 years of teaching, I know that everyone has an imagination, and generally that imagination is more powerful than you realize. So if you take a look at the chart on the right, this is sort of a, a graphic that explains the universal creative process. And this is a generalized universal sort of idea of how creativity is practiced. So you identify a goal, you gather data, research. So designers, just like marketers, have to do a lot of research and analysis and understanding of the things that they create or the people that they create things for. Okay, so from there you clarify your challenges. Are you going to use Photoshop to create an animation or a static graphic? Are you going to use HTML and CSS to create a compelling website? What are the challenges there? From that point, you generate ideas, you sketch, and you iterate, you prototype, you strengthen those prototypes through iteration and refinement, and then you plan for implementation. And then ultimately you implement, and then you evaluate your solution and its efficacy, its successes and failures. That's a generalized one. And I typically recommend that people build their own creative process off of this universal example. So one thing I want you to think about is what hemisphere are you? Okay, are you on the left or the right? Generally, designers tend to be right-brained. They have high emotional intelligence, high imagination, great ability for expression, visual and vocal. They're intuitive, they're creative. And then if you're on the left, maybe you're more analytical, numbers driven, logical. Maybe you excel more in science and math and process and organization. Um, Maybe some of you feel similar to me that you are right down the middle. And I absolutely believe that I am both brained. And it's quite an interesting place to be because I'm able to use both those sides, both hemispheres, and the conditions within them to create really compelling and imaginative and visually strong work that also happens to be based on a rigid process, an organized process. If you are not center-brained, that's completely fine. It doesn't mean that you have deficits on the brain on the hemisphere rather, that you don't, have, specialization in, or which one you feel that you are. Balance is important in design and marketing for that matter, but sometimes being entirely right-brained gives you an advantage over your competition, over other people. It allows you to see the world from a completely different angle, and sometimes that angle is silly and atypical and just kind of surprising, and it lets you create some amazing things. So if you feel like you're right-brained, lean into it. If your brain, lean into it. But if you are right-brained, try to apply logic and analysis and maybe organization, math, and process to your otherwise abstract expressions. And inversely, if you're left brain, try getting creative and vague and introducing emotion and tone and expression into the things that you're doing. And I think that you'll find that this is a great way to build confidence, but also still provide some solutions or ideas that you didn't necessarily know that you were capable of from the beginning. So another way to look at this is looking at your brain being split into three parts. This some call this the triune brain. And if you ask a neuroscientist, they may disregard this concept completely, but I like it because it helps break down in a very basic way the parts of your brain and their functions. So the neocortex is where the metaphorical, the hypothetical, the thinking activity occurs. All right. So this is where you're going to be doing a lot of conceptualization and experimentation and expression and just thinking. The limbic system is very feeling driven. So this is your impulse, your instinct. And so when you're in the design process, maybe you're working on a logo or something that is otherwise vague, it's that snap, that aha moment when this thing that I just came up with, this is it. And that's your instinct justifying and authenticating the research that you've done, the thinking that you've done. And it's a wonderful moment when you have that. And then the last part is your reptilian brain. It's your biological functions. It's the breathing that you do when you realize you're not breathing. Okay, it's the seeing that you do when you realize you're not seeing. These are completely, automatic things that you don't think about. They just happen. They're always occurring. Okay, but the main part to that is the fight or flight response. With your reptilian brain, you have the fight or flight response. Is it a threat? Is there danger? This helps in the sense of evaluating your ideas, particularly your fight or flight response will occur when you start testing your ideas with other people. And it's that fight or flight that helps build resilience when you're critiquing someone's work or having your work critiqued by a supervisor, by a peer, or by a completely objective stranger. So understand that that's sort of the back end of what's happening when your work is being critiqued and you're responding to that. It's up to you to pull away and tap out or lean into it, fight, and try to understand what is happening there with your work and improve it. Okay, so your brain, like a computer, can be programmed and reprogrammed and reprogrammed and reprogrammed. This is how we learn. This is how we train ourselves to do certain things. Nevertheless, if you're willing to be reprogrammed and be programmable, then you are going to find more success with your creative solutions. You're going to be more malleable, flexible, nimble, being more open-minded. And those criterion there are just so much of, they are characteristics that truly define a great designer. Resilience, nimble, flexible. You're willing to bend and waver and adapt to a variety of conditions that ultimately make your work better. So what are all of the conditions that you may encounter as a designer? Okay. What you're looking at here is called the box. And what I want you to remember is that your mind is not in the box. The box, as a metaphorical construct, is in your mind. Okay. And these are the walls of the box: fear, knowledge, complacency, assumption, rules, and habit. These are the walls that you encounter daily. The severity of what you encounter there, of course, varies. But when you put yourself into the mind of the designer and the things that they're making and how they make them, it's important to acknowledge these walls, and we'll go through them one at a time. So before we go through them one at a time, I want you to consider, how do you get out of the box? Perhaps you've had some writer's block or some designer's block, and you feel like you can't move forward. Nothing you're creating is really interesting or unique. So how do you get around that? Okay, the box is in your mind. So too are the walls. What do the walls represent to you? Ultimately, you don't know what you don't know. So you need to adapt a mindset of curiosity. Look at things from a different angle and ultimately recognize that questioning, curiosity, is the journey towards discovery. So I often use a phrase when I'm lecturing, and that is, one of the things that defined my career is I always chose to zag when other people always chose to zig. Okay, so I'm purposely making atypical counter choices when appropriate to what everyone else is doing. Now, it could be as simple as, okay, we're all going to a conference and we're all going to walk through the front door. I'm going to try to find the back door, or I'm going to take the side door, or I'm going to get there first, explore the building, and then go into the conference. So sometimes when you willingly choose the atypical path, you're creating new experiences for your brain. Your synapses start firing. Experiences are new. Our brains love to learn. They love new experiences. So when you're feeding your brain new experiences all the time, that's helping you grow and transform and expand your capacity for your imagination. So let's talk about fear. All right. A new idea always arrives untested, without any guarantee as to its success in the present or in the future. Some phrases that you may have heard in school or at your job: it will never work, we don't have the time, it's not the budget, let's see what the committee thinks, it's not our style. Whatever those phrases are, I want you to be able to recognize them and try to understand where exactly they're coming from. Because assessment, especially spot assessment, when it happens so quickly, it doesn't necessarily mean it's objective. In fact, most of the time, I think it's bias because there's no objective analysis or review of an idea, what, even be it small or big. A new idea always arrives untested. Sometimes you will arrive at an idea that everyone will shoot down, but it will be exactly the idea that you need to solve the problem. So be dogged, be determined, persevere when you hear those fear-inducing phrases. Also, consider the source. If you're starting to recognize yourself as a creative person that's creating all of these new and innovative ideas, that is threatening to people. All right, so they are experiencing fear while you are also simultaneously experiencing fear, but you're experiencing fear individually for different reasons. Yours is rejection. Theirs is also a different type of rejection, but I won't belabor that. So ideas are like electricity. They contain tremendous amounts of energy, but are only harmful when handled carelessly. Okay, so handle your ideas with care. Don't be so quick to shoot them down or reject them. There are sketches I have in notebooks going back 10 years that I still reference. You never know when an idea that you had is going to work on a project, be it now or in the future. So while you're carefully handling your ideas, also know that the road to brilliance is often paved with absurdity. I love this graphic because I have no idea why it exists. That's a person in a pink shark costume. Someone thought that that was an awesome idea, so they spent the time and the money to make it. And I don't know the context of this. It's just funny. It exists. The fact that it exists is just remarkable. But if you look at the costume, like, it's really well designed. It's well manufactured. The person is considering it from an experiential point of view. You could consider this to be some form of brilliance, but it's also paved with absurdity. So I'm saying this to encourage you to have fun with your ideas. Be silly, be funny, and it makes something stupid and frivolous and funny, and knowing that it's not going to lead anywhere. The point isn't that the thing that you're making leads you somewhere. It's that the thing that you're making stimulates new ideas and new thinking that will eventually take you in a new direction. So as we're talking about the walls, I want you to consider assumption. Like the lenses in a pair of glasses, assumptions act as filters that change the way we see things. If you're always looking at the things that you're making with a particular filter of assumptions, you are immediately jeopardizing the success of those ideas. A lot of the things that I make because I feel they are good ideas. I see those ideas out and then I pitch them. And more often than not, those ideas land really, really well. But that's, of course, based on experience and research and having a deep emotional understanding of the things that I'm designing and the people that I'm designing them for. So at that point, it's not even necessarily an assumption, but the people reviewing your work will react with assumptions immediately, like it's nothing. And you need to be able to advocate for your work and yourself as you're presenting it to people, because they don't see the future of it like you do. They just assume that, oh, this is a thing. Yeah, they're very talented. It's nice, but it will never work. And then that ultimately comes back to fear. Knowledge is assumption's bigger and stronger brother. You don't know what you don't know. So you have to be willing to learn new things, learn a lot of new things. It's about breadth, knowing a little about a lot. So it's not about depth necessarily. The more you learn in terms of breadth, the more and better your understanding of the world will be, and the people that you're designing for. And if you're willing to be curious and journey into learning new things, you are going to grow more and more and more over time. Relatedly, one thing that people ask me is, how did you get so much experience in such a short amount of time? And this is one of those ways. I discovered what I wanted to know, what I didn't know, and then I worked to learn those things. And then I put them into practice in shorter intervals, and I was able to, I was able to learn those things, and that's totally fine. And it worked, and you can do the same, essentially. So let's talk about the rules. So create a rule-free zone for yourself, as well as a fear-free zone. Don't be afraid. And listen, anytime you need me, I'm here for you. Fear is the devil, and I'll be your exercising priest helping you out. You just got to let me know, okay? You have to apply a fear-free zone, a rule-free zone for your creativity. Otherwise, what you're trying to do will not be hitting your potential, okay? Sometimes, in fact, most of the time, the things that you're making will have limits. There will be rules that you have to respond to. But the idea is to set your idea high and then negotiate it down to a fine point. If you're able to create really lofty, pie in the sky, 10,000 feet in the air ideas, moonshot ideas, things that will never work, and you keep iterating them as you move down this inverse pyramid to that fine point, you may find that like, okay, yeah, these ideas could actually work. It's when you're completely liberated from those rules that you're able to supercharge your creativity. And unfortunately, in the design industry, because of the time-based nature of needing to produce design quickly, a lot of that goes away. But I'm here to tell you to make room for it. And good employers that value creativity, especially in like ad agencies, in-house departments and corporations or universities and the like, generally they value that because they want the best of you, the best work that you can make. So I want you to think about the habits that you also have in your life and how that prohibits you from making the best use of your creativity. The problem with habits is that they don't just dull your awareness of what you're doing. They dull your awareness of how you might do it differently or better. If you fall into these everyday consistent habits, will hold you back. So you have to be willing to zag when everyone's zigging. Okay, if you wake up at the same time every morning, maybe one day a week, wake up at a random time before that set time, 6:30, 5:45, 3:30. Maybe you wake up later, 9 a.m. It could be that simple. Maybe you don't eat breakfast one day. Maybe you eat something different. Maybe you decide to have candy for breakfast. Really just be anything that breaks your consistent habit that will jog new thinking. All right. Think of it this way. Every day you are put on a path, and every day you choose to walk the same path at the same time. Everything on that path you anticipate and expect. Okay. It's the second that you get away from that you start to experience new things. And like I said, our brains crave new experiences, new learning. So every time you acknowledge a habit, of which there may be several that you have, there is a chance to fire up curiosity and find a creative way of improving what you do. So one thing that I do when I'm working on a project is I hit the notebook. I start writing down emotional words, adjectives. My vocabulary with adjectives is incredible, vast, because what I'm doing is I want to create a solution that hits these emotional touch points. It could look like total dog shit, but if it hits those emotional tones, those pillars, then I've succeeded. Okay. So nevertheless, when you acknowledge a habit, it could be like hitting that sketchbook, or it could be, I get all my good ideas in the shower, so I have to take a shower every time I start something. Try to break from it, and it may improve what you do. And a lot of that's going to be trial and error. The next wall is complacency. The old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. There are a lot of people, like you can see in the chart here, that claim success because they aren't willing to change what's already working. And to certain extents, that can make a lot of sense. It's situation appropriate. But in the other sense, if you are so complacent that nothing changes, then nothing will ever change. And the quality of your solutions won't get better. They'll become stagnant. Okay. So as you design, you're going to have this bag of tricks in your toolbox, or even a toolbox. And in that bag of tricks or your toolbox, whatever, metaphor you want to use here, you're going to have particular processes that work for you. You can be successful with. One of the things that I do is, like I said, I make that list of emotions, and then I'll draw like lines that represent that emotion. So for example, comfortable would be like two lines that are kind of wavy, but not super jagged or really wavy. They're just like very subtle. And so I make visual equivalents to particular emotional touch points. The more that I do that, and the more that those results are the same, then I've become complacent in that. So I need to work outside of that and change my process. really easy to become complacent in a job, especially if you're in class in a design studio course or something like that. You always want to be successful in your work. And if you've discovered a process that consistently successful for you, why would you deviate, right? But at a certain point, like the ideas that you create will no longer be personally satisfying to you. So those were the walls. Now let's reframe this and try to discover what the problem is. All right. So we are visual problem solvers. Graphic designers, yeah, we make graphics, we make pictures, we make layouts and brochures and websites, and those are manifestations of what we do. Those are expressions. But at our core, we are communicators. We're visual communicators. We solve communication problems. Okay, so I want you to think about the problem that you are going to solve visually through design. And the idea here is that you don't just go looking for a solution. That's what all designers do, all right? At least when they're in school or shortly out of school. Newly minted entry-level designers, they go looking for a solution immediately. And the thing is, like, a solution is not going to necessarily find you. What you need to do is you need to look harder at the problem. The who, what, where, when, why, how, whom, which, when. Think about those variables, those conditions. And when you start to think about the problem at hand, you are able to then develop your creative process in a much more concentrated, optimized way. And this is an example of some of the things that you may encounter as you are moving through developing your own creative process. Understanding your ambitions, restating and reframing problems, finding the problems behind the problems, separating cause, problem, and effect, changing perspective, identifying motivators, challenging assumptions, extending your sphere of influence, overcoming barriers, and through all of that, clarifying what's working, what's not, your successes, your failures, your insecurities, your strengths, etc., and committing to what you're going to make and how you're going to make it. So, how do you understand your ambitions? Define the problem. What is the problem? Where are the opportunities? And Katie, I will not say opportunity cost. I think you and I are both sick of hearing that phrase from a particular colleague. And then what are the criteria for success? All right. Ask yourself those three basic questions, because your ambitions, the energy that you put into solving a design problem is going to be reflected in how you answer those three questions. What is the problem? Where is the opportunity? What is the opportunity? And what is the criteria for success? You don't know if what you make will work, so you have to approach it like a scientist, okay? Here's the hypothesis. Here are the resources. Here's what I want to do. Let's take those two things and then work towards solving that goal. And did it work or not? You have to be able to prove a return or not on the things that you're making. So also consider who. Who are the parties involved? Who is losing out? Who's benefiting and how? Why is there a picture of Fat Thor there? I don't know. I just did it. It makes me laugh. Okay. But who's involved in the problem? Who are you solving the problem for? Who is not a part of that problem or that solution that could benefit from it? And ultimately, who is benefiting? Yes, your client. Yes, you. But who else and how? So try to understand that as well, and you'll start to see your ambition scale, and you might start to have ideas generate and process. Okay. That's where the idea spark, the lightning bulb sort of hits. Aha. Also ask why. Why has this problem developed? Why am I designing a brochure to, promote this program? Why? Has no one ever done this before? Why have we not solved it before? Why are we doing it now? Try to understand why things don't occur before they hit your desk. And understanding that will kind of inspire you in a way. Like, for example, part of my side work is I rebrand communities. One of the reasons I like doing that is because most people don't really think about branding communities. There's a lot of opportunity there. It's very ambitious, but it's also a problem that many people, in some cases, some cities, some communities have never even solved. They didn't even know it was a problem. So I see my ambitions scale and grow as a result of that. I get to solve a problem that no one else has ever even thought about or even recognized that was a problem. That's an incredible thing. And it can be really transformative. Also think about when. When will we take action? When will this task or this project be complete? When will we review and assess the results? Will we start this again? When will we make new versions or revisions? You have to consider time in all the things that you're doing, because you can beat an idea to death and still come out empty-handed. So let's take a look at these charts. These are really, really useful with respect to helping you ideate and solve your problems. So this chart here is called cause, problem, and effect. You state the problem in the center box, and then you list the effects on top, and then the causes to those effects. And then you can expand this however you need to. Understand that the more you understand a problem, the better the solutions you will be able to create and provide to your clients or to your employer. Additionally, there's something to be said about institutional knowledge. The more you know about critical functions within your institution, the harder it will be to replace you. People will want to keep you around because you know how to solve really complex problems, while someone else who may be tasked with solving it or eventually be tasked with solving it doesn't even know how to approach the problem at all. Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to really build a strong brand and reputation for yourself, but also grow your knowledge base on the things and people that you're designing for. The next chart is changing your perspective, where you list the problem in the center, and then you write down all of the people that it affects and what their problem is related to the main problem. So, hey, Josh, I'm going to mute you. There we go. Okay. So list those people and what their problem is in relation to the problem. One problem that I always had when I was in school was scheduling classes. Especially, you know, when I was in college, it was a huge pain in the butt because I had to work with some advisors to do it. I had to do some of it digitally, and it was all based on a queue. And, you know, there was always problems with that. So the problem is I have to schedule classes. Okay, well, who does that affect? And then you list that there. So I won't expand on that further. Let's go to the next chart. And this is the problem roots chart. Identify the problem on the right and then work backward to understand the problem behind the problem until you get to the root cause of the problem. Okay. When you understand that true underlying root cause, then you'll be able to move forward and solve all of the problems behind the problems until you eventually solve the critical problem at hand. And then identify your motivators. So I always like to remind people of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I know many of you, if not all of you, of course, are aware of this. But I want you to be aware of your motivators and the motivators of the people that you're creating for. Similar to you, they have a need to feel secure. They want to save time. They want to look good, make money, save money, feel good. Or you can look at the triangle on the right, and you know that's what they're looking for. You need to be aware of those motivators as well, because in some cases the solutions that you provide will help them save time. It may make them look good, especially if they're like your supervisor. In some cases, maybe you design an ad campaign that enhances the community and makes people feel good. So you can have direct emotional what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, I'll rephrase it. You can have a very direct influence on people's emotions, and really design and advertising, that's all we really do. Nevertheless, when you find those emotional touch points, not only are you solving problems for your end users, but also your clients and supervisors and peers on your team if you happen to be working somewhere. The next chart is challenging assumptions. List what you know as fact. List what you think you know might be fact, but can't confirm. And then list the things that you don't know. Again, the broader this picture is, the better. So you can identify all of the things that you don't know and then learn them, gain some clarity, and discover the facts behind your points of ignorance. And then that way, again, it makes you smarter, it makes your solutions more enriched and refined and smart, intelligent. The next chart here is your sphere of influence. You know, this is something that in higher ed I deal with daily. I personally am trying to change the game and influence and create a lot of innovation. And I need to be able to know who I can control to make that influence and that innovation happen. I need to know who I can influence and then who I can reach. Ideally, I want to be able to control a lot so I can expand my innovation, but it comes over time. Okay, but this chart may help you identify the specific motivators with the people that you can control, influence, and reach, and they all have different motivations. Overcoming barriers. So again, list the problem, and then underneath list, let's say, 10 barriers that have stopped you from solving the problem in the past, and ask, how can we get around it? Well, the problem, well, the borough of California University, or I'm sorry, California, Pennsylvania has a terrible logo. Why hasn't it been resolved? And then you can list those questions. Well, government bureaucracy, the heavy hand of CalU and their influence, a lack of interested designers, a lack of resources, whatever it may be. And then try to ask problems about, well, how can we get around this? So, for example, let's say you wanted to rebrand California, Pennsylvania, and it's never happened before. Well, some people don't realize that it was a problem. So how do you get around that? Introduce it as a problem by way of talking about their economic development capability or their community engagement capability. That will stir up conversation that will expand and create more dialogue and conversation, in some cases arguments. But it's all moving towards identifying and ultimately solving that problem. And then your creative compass. So this is just something that I like sharing. This is called the ideascape, essentially. And it's to keep your thoughts flowing. The true enemy of creative thinking is no thinking. So this is just a simple way to orient yourself, all right? And you can move in either direction. So at the top, some questions you're asking are, where are we now? How's the problem affecting me? So on and so forth. But this is just something that I'll leave in the slide deck that you can download and explore more of them. And then ultimately, what stops solutioning? Do I feel lost? Do I feel clueless? Do I feel adrift, trapped, overwhelmed, bewildered, tricked, spellbound, hopeless, overloaded, stuck, frustrated? What is stopping you? You need to figure out what is stopping you from hitting your creative potential, okay? And once you're able to do that, acknowledge it, identify it, acknowledge it, then you're going to be able to overcome it. And then you'll be able to develop your own creative problem-solving process that builds confidence, builds creativity, and ultimately helps you innovate and level up your creativity over time. So to the point when you're at my point in when you're when you're 15, 20 years into your career, problems that you will deal with won't even really be problems. So you'll be able to overcome them very easily. And in some cases, you actually anticipate and look for the challenge. So that's all I have to say about that. I'll take questions that you may have. If not, then I think we're good. Valerie, Julia, what do you think?
I thought that was a great presentation. I really liked how, I don't know, I never looked at things in that way, like the creative process way, and I'm trying to get back into it. So
Yeah, cool.
And I thought the right brain and the left brain was cool. I watched this one podcast where it said to like either your right brain, like you're supposed to write down all the creative things you have to do and then all the logical things you have to do, and like say the morning you do all your creative things and it's easier to transfer, like later in the day you can do the logical things because it's easier, but I don't know.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I'll have to ask you about that later. But Valerie, you good? Any questions?
Yeah, that was a really good presentation. I really liked that. Have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome, and what do you have? Do you have any advice for someone like me? Like, I definitely deal with that all the time. Do you have any advice?
I have had my fair share of bouts with imposter syndrome. And, you know, ultimately, I think for me, it came down to I had the experience of creating the thing that I did. I went through it step by step and I lived it. Oh, that's great. Josh's presentation is all about imposter syndrome. So
oh, great.
Yeah, so well timed.
Amazing.
Anyway, it is something that occurs very frequently, especially with creative professionals. And, you know, I have to remind myself that, like, I lived it, I experienced it, I understand all the intricacies and little details. And that is a validating experience. I have to acknowledge that. And ultimately, you know, through that realization, you realize that, yeah, you know, I did something really cool, and I deserve the accolades or the attention for it. Not that that's what it's about. Ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, it's about creating a solution that helped me grow as a designer and as a creative professional. And if my solutions do that for me, then that imposter syndrome kind of goes down and it kind of goes away. It's just kind of like a shadow that tails you, but it's not lingering above you. And that's just something that I think time and practice and a healthy understanding of your capabilities and your ambition will sort of mute. So out of curiosity, what's going on when you feel imposter syndrome?
Honestly, just not feeling like I'm capable enough. Just like even looking at jobs and internships and stuff like that, and where like jobs will be like, oh, we want you to have a bachelor's degree and I only have an associate's. So then I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't apply for this. I'm not qualified for this. I don't know if I have enough experience and all of that.
Sure. Yeah. I totally understand that. And Katie, are you there?
Yes.
Any thoughts on that? Because you'd be a great person to.
Hi, hello. Sorry, I look like this.
It's okay.
You look great.
You're good.
You look great.
I was a career advisor for 3 years, and if I could tell you anything, it's that if you can speak to your experiences and the way that they resonate within the job description, your qualifications matter, but the experience matters more. I have students who have 2, 3, 4 advanced degrees who cannot speak to their experiences, who cannot talk about how things translate into other arenas, and they're not going to, they may get an interview, but they're not going to be the person that somebody hires, right? So as much as creative thinking and creative problem solving matters in the context of RJ's presentation. What also matters is being able to creatively tell your story. It's one of the first things that we ask graduate students to do at Pitt is, what are the things that you're good at and how are you going to convince somebody that you're good at those things? So I think that part of the process is writing those things down and getting really comfortable in speaking with them and getting really comfortable in outlining your results and the results that you drive regardless of sort of the degree type that you have.
And thank you, Katie.
Of course.
Yeah. Hey, that's what we're here for.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So Josh is going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to stop the recording and then
Okay.
we're for his presentation.
Cool.